So this is, and I know there's probably a lot of people
One thing that is really, really well done is I taken time out of an insane film.
Wow, you are going to be blown away by Jose's story. I don't even know that I have the right words to set up what you're going to hear today, but let me just paint the picture this way. Imagine that you're at the movie theater with your wife when you get a message that says, "Hey, boss," because you're the CEO of a major corporation, "I need you to get on a plane tomorrow and fly down to Venezuela and handle a conference and a meeting because it's a really important meeting." You get down there, and when you get down there, they arrest you and your team, throw you into captivity, and you don't leave. Listen to this number: for 4 years and 8 months. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You're arrested and you are thrown into prison and kept in isolation for much of that 4 years and 8 months. How do you handle yourself? You're going to hear how Jose kept his hope and his faith alive during that incredible time of captivity as the leader of the Citgo Six when they spent almost 5 years arrested and in a Venezuelan jail on this episode of Unbeatable. Hey, before we get into the interview for this episode, I want to invite you to go with me on the trip of a lifetime. And that is not an exaggeration. I've spent more than the last year building a tour of the Holy Land that never existed before. This is what we're calling the Unbeatable Adventure, where we're going to rappel, we're going to climb cliffs, we're going to ride mountain bikes through the countryside, we're going to swim in the Dead Sea, we're going to climb trails, we're going to spend nights under the stars and spend days in luxury hotel rooms. We'll be in fishing boats on the Sea of Galilee. This is basically everything that you could want to do with action and adventure in Israel, plus all of the world's great historical sites there. And the dates for this trip are March 17th through the 27th. I want to invite you to come along. We built this trip so no matter where you live in the world, all you need to do is buy plane tickets and show up in Israel on day one. And from there, we pay for and we take care of everything. Hey, if this epic tour sounds like something you're interested in, why don't you go over to Signature Tours and search for the Unbeatable Holy Land Adventure with Jeff Strucker. It starts March 17th and it runs until the 27th. I would love to see you there with me.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.
Jose, thank you for giving me a little bit of time and being a guest on this episode of Unbeatable with me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Look, I tried to practice this a couple of times right before we started recording, and I know I'm not going to get it right. So I'm just going to ask you, would you pronounce your last name so that everybody who's... Yes, thank you. So that everybody who's listening right now knows who I'm talking to, because I don't know why I'm struggling so hard with your last name right now, but I'll give it a shot before we're done. Hey, what we're going to do is talk about almost 5 years of captivity for doing absolutely nothing wrong. True story. I went on a small team to Venezuela. I went to the coast in January, actually like the first week of January 2000. You may know in December of 1999, huge floods as a result of torrential rains.
You were there?
Yeah. So
wow.
I went there with a small team to Venezuela. There was a mudslide, as you're probably aware, wiped an entire village off of the side of a mountain, pushed them into the ocean. 30 to 50,000 people literally vanished off the face of the earth.
50,000 is the non-official count. 50,000, yes.
Their bodies were never recovered, and I worked myself to death. I mean, shoveling wet, heavy mud, just trying to pull bodies out of the rubble to see if anybody was still alive. I did this for almost 10 days with a small team of about 5 or 6 other people. And the day that we were getting ready to leave, I'm clearly an American, obviously don't look Venezuelan. And the day that we're getting ready to leave and fly out of Caracas and head back to the United States, me and my buddy got stopped by 2 immigration guards, and they didn't want to let us on the airplane. And this was one of the most tense moments that I've experienced up to this point. And I've already been to combat a couple of times by this point, but it's pretty obvious they want to pull us out of the group, pull us away from the rest of the flight, put us off in a separate room, and start asking some pretty serious questions. And I just kind of muscled my way onto the airplane. I still remember what it felt like to this day, because once you get pulled away from the rest of the group, once you get separated, once you start to become, part of that state-run government, this is under President Hugo Chavez, there's not a lot our country can do for you. This, for me, lasted moments, literally just a few moments. And I got on the airplane, and when the engines finally started rolling and the wheels took off and we were finally in the air, I didn't breathe that's right. I didn't breathe a sigh of relief until I could see the coastline of Venezuela behind us. That was nothing, absolutely nothing compared to your 4 years and 8 months in captivity. I needed to help people understand why you were going down to Venezuela as part of the Citgo 6. This tells you how notorious this event was when there's a name attached to it. What were you doing in the oil industry leading up to going to Venezuela back in 2017?
Yeah, I did a long career in the oil and gas. I'm Venezuelan born and dual citizen. So I began my career in Venezuela in 1985 when PDVSA was one of the biggest companies of the world, was the 5th company of the world. So was very proud working there. And I began working on a lot of international projects. And like 15 years ago, I came here as an expat from PDVSA to Citgo. Citgo Petroleum is the U.S. based company. Is, by the way, the 6th refinery here in the U.S., but it's owned by PDVSA. So I came there and became a Citgo employee, and then I finalized my career in Citgo. And by the way, in 2017, I was the CEO of the company. I became the CEO.
I'm going to say that one more time so that the people that are driving don't miss this. When you go down to Venezuela in 2017, by this point, you're the CEO of, I remember Citgo, it is a pretty large oil company. And for the guests that are not aware of it, in the world's oil supplies, Venezuela is up there in the top 5 in the petroleum supplies for the world. So you've got a lot of responsibility and a lot riding on your shoulders in 2017.
Yeah, and let me tell you that's exactly right, because I became the CEO, and in August of that year, August 2017, began the big dispute with the regime of Venezuela. Hugo Chavez already was dead, and it was in place Maduro, had like 3 or 4 years there. So they did like a fake election, and then the president of U.S. here, Trump, about that moment, decided to begin to impose sanctions in August. So that was the environment that was going around. And when I saw that, to tell you the truth, I told my wife, I said, I don't like this. I'm gonna get retired. I was having 35 years by that time in the company. So in October, I flew to Caracas because I normally went there back and forward, very normal. And I flew to Caracas and talked with my boss, but that was the president of PDVSA at that time, and asked him that I wanted to get retired. He agreed. He accepted my retirement to February the next year. So I was literally 4 months to get retired.
Wow, you were 4 months away from retiring.
4 months. So I came back, was at Thanksgiving season, 4 days to Thanksgiving. I was preparing everything to my family. I were in vacation mode after that, and coming back 1 or 2 months after, gone, retired, becoming a consultant. That was my plan. That never happened because in
Of course not.
in November 2020, I was in a movie here in Houston. I live in Houston. I was in a movie with my wife. I'm a big Marvel and DC fan. I was looking Superman, in a movie, relaxing, seeing Superman, and I received a phone call. I received that phone call that said, "Hey, Jose, you have to come tomorrow to Caracas. There's going to be a big budget meeting here." We were revamping a refinery in Aruba at that time. I had to make the presentation. So I didn't see nothing wrong. I went with my 5 top tier guys, my 5 vice presidents that were also Venezuelan dual citizens. And we did the presentation. There was a big room with 1,000 people around the world. I made my presentation. I had the plane in Maquete Airport waiting for me to come back to Houston. And as you said, that was the most terrifying moment in my life. Came like 20 guys with these, I always tell, there's like a Robocop outfits. Big tall guys.
RoboCop outfit.
Yeah. That look with some masks. Some masks
so you couldn't see their face.
Skeletons, like skeletons, very scary, very scary. When I see all those guys coming in, everybody got scared. And to tell you the truth, I didn't know, no clue who these guys were because they have here a big name in yellow that said Digesin. The guy that's beside me, I said, "What the fuck is Digesin?" And I was scared to death. That was the counterintelligence police that has been trained by the Russians, by the Cubans, by the Iranians, and by the Chinese. Can you imagine this guy, how evil they are? Well, this guy asked my name, and when I heard my name, I said, "Why this guy asking for me?"
Yeah.
So they put us in a separate room, and then came a general. I'm the general, blah, blah, blah. And you are accused by espionage, treason to the country, embezzlement, corrupt. I was like, what the heck? They put us handcuffed, and that day began my nightmare. That was the beginning of the nightmare, my friend. So that's how this story started.
All you and the 5
Yes.
vice presidents that went with you are pulled off of this plane. Is it a private plane that you're on?
It was a Citgo corporate plane, yes.
Yes. So a corporate plane. Basically, they just pulled the entire crew off of the
completely, yes, yeah.
And the guys that grabbed you off of that plane are not just physically intimidating, but that kind of intelligence, background makes them really scary because of their
totally scary. The way they do, where you're an ex-military and you know what it is.
Sure,
they're yelling to you. That look, everything is set up to be scared to death.
I know interrogation tactics, unfortunately, really well, and I know how overwhelming they're supposed to be. So, did you get a chance to even let anybody know when they pulled you off of this plane and threw you in a room, or at this point, did they take your phones and everything else?
Everything was taken. The only way my family knew is I had the driver waiting for me, and the driver, when he saw everything, called my wife here in Houston. He said something wrong is going to Joseba. Of course, in minute was hitting all the news because the way this guy behaved, they are really mean. They know how to be mean. So the announcement was done by the president. We got those spies, blah, blah. So when we realized what was going on is that we were caught in the middle of this big dispute between the U.S. and Venezuela. We never thought that we could get caught in that situation. To tell you the truth, in my nightmare, I thought that.
Yeah, I want to give the audience a little bit of geopolitics right now, very briefly, so that before you keep telling the story. Venezuela, because it's so rich in oil, when there's an embargo against other countries, North Korea, Iran, other countries like that, although they're international embargoes, sometimes Venezuela will, sometimes they won't honor those embargoes. And as a result, the rest of the United Nations countries that are trying to honor those embargoes then get there starts to be beef between those countries, i.e., the United States and Venezuela, and it just goes downhill. When the president, and this is for the audience, when the president starts to parade you around and tell the country of Venezuela, look who we captured, now it puts the president and his administration in Venezuela in a position where I've got to take this thing to the full extreme, or else I'm going to look bad in the eyes of my people if I don't, severely treat you and prosecute you and either send you away for the rest of your life or kill you. I mean, that's typically how it's going to go when you become a very public presidential pawn at this point, which is what happens to the Citgo Six.
Yeah, let me tell you, Jerry, next 10 months, I was totally disappeared. 10 months disappeared. No clue what was going on with me. We were separated. They put me in a vessel that they call the submarine, that totally locked, no windows, no fresh air, no nothing. So the light 24/7 turned on. At some point, I lost totally the sense of the time.
Yeah,
I got
of course.
lost, totally
Sure.
lost.
10 months in isolation, no outside stimulus, and the lights are on for 24 hours a day for 10 months. I hope that people that are listening to this right now are sitting there trying to imagine what it would feel like when you can't tell if it's Tuesday or Friday, you can't tell if it's the middle of the afternoon or the middle of the night, and you have no idea how long you've been there. And by the way, that's when time starts to stand still. And I don't know if I've been here for a week or for a year by this point. And I realize that's hard for some people to understand, but I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, this is what it's like for prisoners under these kind of conditions. They don't know if I've been here for a week, a month, or a year at this point.
Yeah, and that's totally true, Jerry. And let me tell you, today still, for me, sometimes it's difficult to, have the chronology of the time, because the time begins to be messy with you. I can tell you that 10 months was the worst thing ever you can imagine, because, by the way, the food, totally terrible. I begin to stop eating because it was rotten. I lost 100 pounds.
100 pounds. Wow.
100 pounds.
When you were there in those 10 months, did they come in and regularly ask you questions? Did they kind of physically abuse you? What was that like?
They didn't abuse me physically directly. They did a lot of psychological abuse.
Yeah, a lot of mind games, right?
A lot of, but I was in that place. The way I learned after we were moved, that in the other side of the wall where I was, there was a torture site. So in the night I could hear. So literally you can hear all the night torturing people.
What was happening to the other 5 vice presidents that were in captivity with you?
I saw them 1 year after. I didn't have no clue. I didn't knew if they were alive or not.
You didn't even see them for an entire year?
1 year. We stayed 1 year separated, yes.
Yeah, for the guys that were in prison of war camps during World War II or Korea or Vietnam, at least they saw their buddies, when they traveled from one part of the camp to the next. If you didn't see anybody that you went there with for a year, that's total isolation right there.
I remember that 1 year after, the first 10 months, one day they opened the door, because I say we were totally locked. So when they opened the door and they said, hey, come here, they always yelled to you and you cannot see them in the face. They never allow you to see their face. You have to be,
keep your head down, right?
Yes. And then they told me, you're going to have 1 minute call. So they gave me a phone and you had 1 minute. And when I called my wife, I remember the phone, but at some point it was like I don't know if this is the phone. So I guess, and it was the phone. I called her.
Right.
And when she answered, wow, when I heard her, she began to cry. And I said, I only have 1 minute. And then she told me, we're fighting hard for you. And I told her, I'm alive. That's what I said. I'm
Yeah.
alive. That was all the call.
The 1 minute phone call, by the way, I don't know anything, just for the listeners, I don't know anything about Jose's story. I'm learning this fresh as you're learning it. But I do know a lot about what it's like to be in captivity. I've seen it. I've gone through a lot of training myself. And I'll tell you that 1 minute phone call itself is torture because anything that you say could be used against you. You know, the government can use that to try to prove their case against you. But after you get off the phone, now you have the joy of hearing your wife's voice and then all of the pain of remembering where you are and how far away from your wife you are and how impossible this situation looks. It all hits as soon as you hand the phone back. So what happens during year 2 and 3 and 4 and almost to year 5 of captivity?
Well, we were evolving because after those 10 months, I learned that the situation was becoming to be really serious. By the way, today I know many things because I came back and I know that.
Yes.
So the story is that since day one, the six family went to talk to the government, and they were really attached to the case since day one. They were received 2 times in the White House, and they had several meetings with a national security advisor, with a State Department secretary. They were really the congressman. Everybody was really involved in that. But the information they were receiving is that stay silent. So that first year, we really went silent. All our family went silent because that was the instruction. Today, I tell the people that don't do that. Go to the press because that makes pressure. So that's a lesson learned. This. So what happened is that the situation began to go so bad between the two countries that at some point they expelled the U.S. ambassador. So
I
the
remember
U.S.
that.
ambassador
Yep.
got expelled, so there was no representation, and we heard about that, and we felt like we were totally lost there. When that happened, we learned after
And
some time that he went 11 times to try to see us. They never allow us to see us.
the ambassador went 11 times.
11 times. He went
Yeah.
11 times. I talked with him after that some time ago, and he confirmed me that he stayed 11 times there, pushing to see us, and he could never see us. By the way, before he got expelled, the only photo that is at that time that I believe is the internet where we are very bad shape was taken by him because they took us to the court. I can tell you, going to the court was a total show because this guy came like 20 guys, and they
Yes, of
loved
course.
everything. They were always
Yeah.
doing a show with us. We became like a
Yeah.
puppets in a show.
Yeah. You became the Venezuelan government's physical or way of demonstrating their problems with the U.S. government, and they just happened to use you as the puppets, like you said, for this. I want to remind people that when a country recalls their ambassador, that is a big step towards war. It doesn't always lead to war, but that is a big step towards war. And if you're now in captivity and the U.S. ambassador has just been recalled from Venezuela, the situation between the U.S. and Venezuela is spiraling downhill real fast.
Yeah.
How did you get some of this news about the ambassador and other
Well,
stuff?
let me
while
tell
you're in
you
captivity?
that is part of the funny thing of all these things that I'm gonna in the book I'm gonna tell it in detail because were another prisoners there that were in another cells that were political prisoners because we were with military political prisoners and some civil political prisoners. There were generals, colonels. There were a lot of military with us.
Yeah. Huh.
So they are part of the political Venezuelan prisoners. We were with all these guys. So some of these guys had years there. So they were having family visits during the Saturday. So this guy, when came, the family visit began to give us news. And we were talking with them through the electrical outlets. We could have
Yes.
communication. And
Oh, that's smart. Through the
yeah,
electrical
yeah.
outlet.
And let me
Yeah,
tell you that
smart.
we begin to have these type of, things, and the humanitarian know better than me, this type of thing. I can tell you, we did a lot of things that today, I don't know how we did it, but when you're in that situation, you begin to be very creative. So we begin
Hmm.
to receive news through that. So we because we were not having visit nothing, but we begin to have some type of information. And this guy knew that we were there, and they were really empathic because they were also prisoners of conscience or political prisoners. So they began to bring up some kind of news, and we knew that there was going to be a commission of the UN coming to visit that because it was all over the news. And they came to visit us. So when the guys of the UN came and they saw us that we were really in bad shape because I have had pneumonia. One of the guys, I heard he had
Oh
bronchitis.
man.
It gave me scabies to me, so we were really in bad shape. That with
Yeah.
no medicine, no medicine. We're talking about 2018 was one of the worst years ever in Venezuela because the oil embargo was in place, the sanctions
Uh-huh.
were in place, the country was a lack of food, medicine. There was a national blackout. Happened a lot of things at that time, and we were there. So when these guys of the UN came, they went and they talked with the president and said, "These guys are gonna die. You have to take care of them." So that's why they decided to begin to allow us, our families, not them, our families, to provide food. So one of my sons had to flew to Colombia. He moved to Colombia, and from Colombia he began to supply medicine and food, and somebody arranged to cook, and they begin to bring me the food to the cell, and that's the way I begin to eat 1 year after. And
Your your family had to provide the food that you survived on, and it
during
had to come across the Colombian border.
let me tell
That's
you, they
incredible.
stayed doing it during 4 years. My son stayed 4 years in Bogota, doing that every week. That was
Wow.
a weekly routine. A weekly routine during
That's
4 years. I can tell
that's
you.
incredible. Wow.
Yeah, amazing. But what's the only way? My wife always says today that what she was trying to do was trying to provide me quality of life because that they begin to allow it to do it. And let me tell you something else. That's the way I managed to have a communication because I said, okay, now I'm having this food. They were asking me to the trash can to bring it back. So I begin to, in a double button, smuggle letters. I begin to smuggle letters with her, and the letters begin to go through. And let me tell you, we stayed doing that during 3 years. I stayed three
Three.
years smuggling
Yeah.
letters, and when I came back, my wife had compiled almost 1,000 letters 1,000 letters. She had put it in Word, and that is today what's going to be my book. That my book is going out is based on those letters. The letters that she and I wrote back and forward during 3 years. We stayed with it 3 years.
Your family is amazing. What is your wife's name?
Mary's, she's my hero.
Yeah. And your son that moved to Bogota, what is his name?
John.
Um, for people that are not aware of just how psychologically traumatic prison is, it's well documented when people lose the will to fight for their own life, basically lose hope that they'll ever get out of a prison camp or out of a, you know, some kind of political prison. That's the moment that their health starts to decline, and almost every one of them died. So when your wife is providing you food and your son is getting the food and medicine across the border, they're not just giving you quality of life, they're actually giving you hope that you might survive. And if you lose hope, and here's the thing that every prisoner has, that's ever, anybody who's ever been in a foreign prison will tell you, the moment that you lose hope is the moment that you're going to die.
I
So the
saw
fact
guys
that
going through that situation there. I saw several cases that
your
they didn't
wife,
make it.
She is an incredible woman. Your son is an amazing man that would be willing to go to those extremes. Of course, they love you, but be willing to go to those extremes because what they were doing is not just giving you food or medicine or even smuggling letters back and forth. They were giving you hope that you might actually make it out of this prison.
That is totally true. For me, the situation began to evolve, and after that, 1 year after, because at that time already the pressure was really high, so they decided to put us together. Can you imagine 1 year after?
Oh, they put all 6 of you together in the
Yes,
same room.
1 year after we were put together, and then we stayed
Okay.
the next 4 years together. Very tiny room, 100 square foot, living in a closet, but we were together. We were together.
Yes, and you could encourage one of those guys when they were really having a bad day. They can encourage you when you're having a bad day.
Wow, man, you're nailing it. That is exactly what we did. You know, the first day we saw it, the first thing we did, we hugged and we cried. We
I
cried
bet
like
you
a
did.
babies because we saw that we were all alive. And then we did. I always say this episode that we did like a board because we were, you know, oil and
Yeah.
gas executive, the 6 of us. So we did like a round table. By the way, the first time in 1 year we had a table. A table. We were eating in the
What?
floor. So we saw a table was like a big deal. We sit down in the table and we decided to create a plan. The plan that we created is today what I call the Life Build for a Survival Guide, my coaching program. Okay, but was based on some techniques that we really thought that we were gonna help us, and we created a plan, a very structured plan, because oil and gas is kind of the military. You know, you always have this strategic thinking, so you are prepared for that. So we created a plan to eat, to clean, to do exercise, to wash ourselves. We didn't have running water, by the way. One of the guy, he did a calculation how much water you can have. So we have these small cans of 5 liters, 1 gallon. So we had 3 gallons per person per day. So that was it. So we stayed with that during 4 years. That we begin to have we had 3 bunk beds, and so we did a plan that everybody could eat in peace. We created a system that a light turned on and turned off at some point. No noise. If you They begin to allow us to have radio, so everybody had headphones. So was a totally silent. If somebody was down, everybody came to jump. It was really, really, really structured. And at the end, we begin to read the Bible and we begin to pray almost 3 hours per day. And at the end, one of my guys, he shouted out very loud, "We're gonna come back strong in soul, body, and spirit."
All
And we
right.
went
All
and we
right.
went to bed.
Yes.
We went to bed. So we begin to do it on a daily basis. Every day, one day at a time. We begin to do that 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and we came back. And we're here.
I want to tell, I want people to hear just the change in spirit of people looking each other in the eyes in that room and saying, we're going to get strong. We're going to get healthy in mind, body, and spirit is your way of saying, we're going to beat our captors by surviving and making it out of here alive. And again, that's the thing that causes people to survive. The moment that they lose hope is the moment that they start to die. But I also know this. You are the CEO, you are a leader, and any leader in an environment like that is not only worried about their family, not only worried about their own personal safety, but you got to be thinking about those 5 guys, especially for that first year when you have no idea if any of them are alive or dead or at home or what. And the extra burden that goes along with being a leader in captivity is concern for the 5 vice presidents that you took with you. So I can only imagine the tears that were flowing when you had a chance to see those 5 guys again.
That is a moment that I will recall for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
For the rest of my life. And I believe it was like a magical moment.
I don't keep up with Venezuela as well as I should, but there was a point where the people of Venezuela were so disgusted, so frustrated with the government that they took to the streets. They were asking for a recall. There's great political pressure on the president at one point. Was that while you were still in captivity?
No, it was the year before. But the funny thing, all those guys that were kept as political prisoners, I met all of them. I know
Those are the
all
guys
of
that were
them.
involved
They
in it.
were with me.
Yeah,
They were with me. I know
sure.
all these guys. So that was 1 year. The rest was 1 year before. They killed a lot of people in the
Yeah.
street. A lot of people.
I bring that moment up, 2016. Thank you for reminding me, because of how volatile and how dangerous the entire situation is in Venezuela. And the president is basically hanging on to power by his fingernails and by, killing or throwing in prison anybody who stands against him. So again, you are his public toy, his puppet, to show how strong he is against the US government. I'm surprised that anyone was able to negotiate your release, but let's just fast forward a little bit. Before we get there, I do think I need people to understand. We're recording this episode just a couple of days before Christmas. Now it's going to air in the middle of January, but I have heard multiple people that have been in prison for years say that first Christmas was brutal. And then there was a second Christmas and it was worse. And the third Christmas was worse. And the fourth Christmas was worse, because I don't know if I'm going to be here for 10 more Christmases or if this is the last one. And I just want to ask you, how did you handle those big moments? Anniversary, children's birthdays, Christmas.
Oh, terrible, terrible. That can you imagine, Jerry? That happened to me 4 days before Thanksgiving. So I was in the worst moment of my life during the Thanksgiving, and then came the Christmas. No, I can tell you, I don't know how I did it. I could take a rope and hang me. Many things go to in your mind, but I was thinking in my family, and there something that really boosted our faith is that when we were put together and that this pressure began to be bigger, our family decided to stop being silent. And the second year, they really went big.
Go to the press.
They went big
Yeah.
to the press, and at some point, they were going so big in the press that the press put the brand. We converted in the Citgo 6. We became a brand, really a brand. We joke today that we're gonna make a rock band called the Citgo 6. Yeah, because it became a brand. We became really literally we became a brand, the Citgo 6. So that began to put a lot of pressure there, and so this guy not only decided to allow us to be together, they allow us to bring those food, and they allow us to have books. So I begin to read like a crazy because our family were sending books and books and books. I was all the day reading, nothing more to do. And then it came a book to my hand that today said that it's a miracle of God. A guy that was a survivor of the concentration camps in World War II, Viktor Frankl, Man in the Search of Meaning.
Viktor Franko's The Man's Search for Meaning.
I read the book, it being there, and I can tell you, when I read that book, wow. First, I understood where we were. We were really like in a concentration camp, because most of the things that he says in his book, we were suffering. But when I heard about how, if you find your purpose in your life, how you make that connection with God, how you find that meaning, wow, that was for me like, okay, this is it. So that really, really made us like, okay, this is it. This is what we're gonna do. And today, I can tell you, for me, Viktor Frankl became like that my light. That he lighted. He was like a blown mind reading that book, and really, 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 after that, our situation changed. Our hope was totally different. Totally different.
Yeah, well, that book has touched millions and millions of people that have never been in captivity,
But
but
can you
I
imagine my
can
case?
only guess what kind of a lifeline, like a life preserver it must have been.
Yeah, for me today, I encourage everybody to read that book. Everybody, and everywhere I go, I talk about that book because that book it really changed my life. I can tell you, it changed my life.
Let's talk, Jose, about how you actually get released. Would you describe what happens? I want to make sure everybody hears this again. You are just a few months short of 5 years. I'll say it in days: 1,775 days. That's 4 years and 8 months in captivity. How do you get released? What happens that causes you to get released?
Okay, happened that there's a change of the administration, and when the new administration comes, one of the good things that was there was created a law, an act called the Robert Levinson Act. It happened in 2019, and this act first created the instance of protecting you as a wrongfully detained. uh, Now you are really under the umbrella of the protection of the state, that they can make strong decisions in your case. And there was created the office of the Special Presidential Office for the Hostage Affair, SPIA, that is in Washington. They they appointed an ambassador. It is today is there, Roger Carson. Maybe I don't know if you know him. Roger Carson. He's a ex Navy SEAL. Well, Roger was appointed by Trump, and he was ratified by Biden. That good news, because there was no transition. And that guy, he 1 year before he could do a quietly travel to Venezuela, the first time the official American was in Venezuela was 1 year before,
Wow.
and he came to visit to us. He went to visit to
Wow.
us, and then we had like a 2 hour talk with him, and he told us, "I'm doing everything to release you guys. You're gonna come back." So he began to visit every 3 months. He was going there. He came in December 2021, then came in March 2022, and came back in May 20. In March 2022, he could bring one of the guys that was in the worst condition. He could release it, like a proof.
He could get one
One,
of your vice
yeah,
presidents
yeah, yeah,
released.
one. Gustavo was released in March 2022. In May, there began to be a lot of info, because remember I was having the letters, so I was really more informed about what was going on, and there was a strong kind of agreement that we could get released in May. Something, this thing. Remember, this is something that is high politics, that between the two countries, something wrong happened and thing didn't happen. He came back in May. In October 1st, 5 a.m. in the morning, they came to the cell and told us, by that time they were calling us the Citgo Six. Hey, Citgo Six, come here. We became the Citgo Six, Citgo Six, come here and dress up. So we thought that was Roger coming, his visit. And when we dressed up, we saw a lot of people there, and they put us in an armored truck. And when I saw in this small window, I saw that said Maiquetía Airport. I said, wow, this is happening. They put us in a plane, kind of funny. It was a PDVSA plane. I knew the plane because I flew in those planes a lot. So it was a PDVSA plane, and they put us handcuffed. They tied our legs, and they wanted to put us
Uh-huh.
in books. I said, hey, what this guy gonna do with us? I begin to be
Yeah.
kind of scared, because you don't know
Of
if
course.
they're gonna throw you in the middle of the
That's
sea.
right. Yeah.
We found a nice landing in a small island called San Vicente and Grenadines. It's a very tiny island that is in the top of Dominican Republic. We landed there in the middle of nowhere, and we were, what the heck were we doing here? So, like 5 minutes after, came the plane of the U.S. with the two nephews of Maduro, and then it came. We learned that day they were
Wow.
released to a prisoner swap. He came to the
Wow.
prisoners. Something
I can
similar to
only,
what's happening today. What I was telling you.
yeah. I can only imagine the feelings when that US airplane showed up and you got, people grabbing you and hugging you and telling you
I
this
sent
is
you the
real and you're
photo. One
actually
of the
going
photos
home.
that your assistant has is that photo we took inside the plane. You have it in the stream of photo. I
Yeah.
sent it to you.
Yeah.
I sent it a photo. There was a photo where all of us are there, and it was really wow. I can tell you, all of us were crying, we're hugging. Wow, what was that
Sure.
emotional moment?
I have a quote that I used to have hanging on my walls for almost 10 years. And the quote was scratched on a piece of paper. It was left on the floor of a military airplane that landed at Clark Field in the Philippines. And it was the last remaining prisoners that came out of the Hanoi Hilton at the end of the Vietnam War. And this quote basically said, and I'm telling the listeners about this quote just to try to, I don't think that words can describe the feelings the moment that you realize, actually, I'm free. But the quote said, freedom has a taste to those who have fought and almost died that the protected will never know. And basically, what that prisoner in that North Vietnamese prison camp was saying is, I now experience freedom that I've never experienced before because I lost freedom like I've never lost it before. And I can tell you from many examples of military that have been in prison of war camps, they'll never forget the moment that they realized I'm finally and fully free. And it will stick with them for the rest of their life. I, I don't know that there are words to describe what that moment must have felt like for you.
I had several moments during that when we were putting in the U.S. plane. I was kind of was a mixed emotion that wow, we released. I was happy because I was released, but at the same time I couldn't believe it. So at some point I was like you know, and the ambassador Carter, he was there. He was sitting beside me. He's sitting with me, and we were talking, and we had like 2 hours flying talking, and at some point he received a call, and he tell me, okay, now it's official. We have crossed international U.S. air, and now you are released. The president has talked with your wife. The president called us his wife and told that we were going to be protected by the U.S. government. We were going to be landed in a military base in San Antonio. We landed in San Antonio.
Uh-huh.
And then I told him, can I talk with my wife? And he gave me the phone. I talked with my wife in the air. So I called her and said, hey, mommy, I'm here. And then she was in shock, And then
Yeah.
I live in Houston. We were going to land in San Antonio like 2 hours after. And then I told, what are you going to do? You have to be here. She has a small shop. So I had that, no, close that. Come here. And then I talked with the Ambassador Carson and I told her to. So they received me. When I landed in the tarmac, in the hangar, there was my wife, all my family. But the funny moment that by the way, I sent the photo to you too, is that my grandson had been born, and I during my captivity. So what my daughter-in-law was doing, it was showing him photos of me, and they were sending me photos of him. So when I saw this tiny guy running to me, and he said,
Yeah.
"Abuelo!" Oh, and I said, "Okay, this is my
I
grandson."
I bet you melted.
I can
Yeah.
tell you, man, this is the best moment ever in my life, ever,
Yeah.
ever.
Wow. Um, like any great leader, you were just about ready to retire, just months away from retirement when you got taken captive in Venezuela. You come back and you end your career with Citgo. But because of what you've been through, like any great leader, you want to help other people. So you started helping others that are in captivity.
Yeah.
Would you tell everybody a little bit about what you started when you returned?
Well, the first thing for me was a surprise knowing that there were another Americans in this situation. And as I said, our families begin to have more involvement with the press. And at some point, they knew other families, that people that are captive in other countries, and they put together and they created a campaign called the Bring Our Family Home campaign. The Bring Our Family Home campaign that they created an alley in Georgetown with 20 faces. My face is there, and uh, that alley became like a sacred place for all of the family. So 1 month after I came in November, I flew to Washington to take me photos in that alley. What I didn't know that I was the first person going there. So it became to be a big event.
Yeah.
Press,
Yeah.
people of the government, congressmen, a lot of people were there. I was like in shock, and then
I'm
then
sure
then
you were.
I was like, what is going on here, But I began to meet those families, and I began to get connected to them. And to tell you the truth, I saw that I was giving a lot of message of hope and faith. And I said, wow, Jose, you had your long career that you did a lot of leadership, and you went through a lot of things in your career, and now you went through this situation. So I combined both things, and I created a coaching program called Life Pill for Surviving Guide. That today I help entrepreneurs, to what I said, to tap their unbreakable spirit and become great leaders. So that's why today I'm talking. I'm really active today. I have a LinkedIn account. I do audio rooms. I do master classes. I have a newsletter. By the way, I became an executive contributor to Brains Magazine. I'm writing there. I'm doing this, doing podcasts. So I begin to talk loudly about this. I wrote my book that's gonna coming out now, talking my story, but talking about what I call my legacy. That is that my message can be a message that can give hope, faith, and strength and resilience.
Jose, you created this Life Pills for Survival guide to help people that have gone through, or families that are going through what your family went through. It is December 20th when we're recording this, although this episode is going to go out on January. We're just a couple of days away from Christmas. And you told me right before we started recording, you've got a really big Christmas present for some Venezuelan families that are living in the United States. Will you tell everybody the big news that just happened today?
Yeah, today is happening something great because several Americans that they are there in Venezuela, almost a dozen of Americans, they're getting released today. It's happening. It's in, these always are some tricky things, but today even the Secretary Blinken did an announcement. They're not officially announcing it, but it's gonna happen. A prisoner swap could happen in any moment. Is it under development? And today I'm connected with all these families, and one of the two guys there are two green bears that they were our neighbors there, so we gathered with them during years. So I called his mom yesterday, and I told her when they come back, I'm gonna fly to meet with them and
Sure.
hug them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great news.
Some
It's a
families.
great Christmas
I was
gift.
gonna, yeah, that's what I was. You took the words out of my mouth. About a dozen families are going to get their best Christmas gift they've
Oh,
ever got
ever,
when they
ever!
get the news that
I
their
so
loved one is
excited by
coming
that.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've talked about your book a couple of times. Now, when this episode airs, your book will just be getting ready to release. So, what is the title of the book, and what is you've already hinted at it, but tell everybody what the book is.
Well, my book is called From Hero to Villain: The True Story of the Citgo Six. Why from hero to villain? Because I was like a true hero, doing things in the Venezuelan oil gas, and then I became a villain. A spy, a treason, all this stuff that they invented, fake thing, everything sham. So I became from hero to villain, and it's the true story of the sequel. I'm telling by my own and unique perspective, because the letters I wrote with my wife, because we were six. So I respect, the 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 other five guys. This is my personal story. This is my personal story, what I went through, how the situation went evolving, and the message that I want to have today to the people that any adversity in your life you can survive.
Yes, that's the reason. That's the reason this podcast exists. But I'll tell all of the listeners, if Jose can go through 4 years and 8 months of captivity for doing absolutely nothing wrong and still be healthy and now helping people on the other side of it, you can go through whatever it is you're facing right now. And maybe you can pick up Jose's book, From Hero to Villain, The True Story of the Citgo Six, and it'll encourage you if you're struggling and people are treating you bad and you didn't even do anything wrong to deserve it. Jose, I want to tell you, thank you for taking some time out of your very busy holiday season to do this interview with me. We're going to let our listeners know how they can get a free copy of your book. I'm going to buy a copy and give it away free to somebody who's listening today. But I just want to tell you, you're an inspiration to me by the way that you conducted yourself in that prison camp. And now by the way that you're using your experience to help other people that are going through the same thing. So thank you for what you're doing. And for those 12 families that are going to learn today that their loved one is getting released, Merry Christmas to them, right?
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. And thank you for so beautiful program, my friend.
Yeah, Jose, it's been great talking to you. I hope you and your family have a great week.
You too, my friend. Bye.
I hope you were blown away by Jose Pereira's story. I told you I was going to try to pronounce his name during this episode, and I know I just mutilated it. For all of you native Spanish speakers, forgive me for my pronunciation. But for everybody that's listening to this episode, when you hear Jose's story, when you hear what Jose has been through, I am convinced you should be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, well, I can handle what I'm going through if Jose can handle what he's going through. And Jose was able to do the same thing when he picked up Viktor Frankl's book and read what he went through in a Nazi concentration camp. The whole reason Unbeatable exists as a podcast is to just help you face your worst moments in life and get up and dust yourself off and not lose hope. Because as we said in this episode, you lose hope and the end is right around the corner. We also talked about Jose's book, so somebody is going to get a free copy of that book, and all you have to do to get a copy is become part of the Unbeatable Army. It is our totally free email list. I send content out, not just about the episodes, but I do regular content throughout the week, and I deliver it straight to your inbox. So if you want to be registered for a free copy of Jose's book, From Hero to Villain, or if you just want some pretty amazing content delivered to your inbox, why don't you go over to unbeatablearmy.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, and you can follow us on social media, because on social media, you're going to find a lot of other people that are unbeatable also, like our fan of the week this week, Sergeant Michael Sergu, Sergeant Retired Michael Sergiu. Thank you for staying connected. Thank you for being so involved. Thank you for being part of the Unbeatable Army. I hope that you have a great week. I hope that you're inspired by this episode, and I'm going to try to bring you another guest next week that's equally inspiring. Thanks for joining me. God bless.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.